Hi, Music Theory. We're going to knock out the rest of the Bach part writing rules, as well as just kind of being a little bit more specific about the types of motion that you have between voices. Okay, so this piggybacks on the video I made that goes over some of the chapter things in which we discussed spacing errors or kind of like the spacing rules, as well as some of the things that you double in certain types of triads, root position, first inversion, second inversion. This is after that one. If you don't know what I'm talking about and you haven't seen me do that video, you should go back and watch that one. Okay, so this one lines out almost all of the rest of the things that we need to worry about. So one of the things we're going to talk about is type of motion. Now, this types of motion that we're talking about, this is like note to note. Okay, so like when we're talking about any voice thing, like this is stepwise motion. But now that we're part writing for multiple voices and we have to worry about how one voice is related to the other, these types of motions are how this voice, in this case soprano, relates to alto that goes this way. So A down to G, G back up to A, E to F, F to G. So this is all ascending, and this is a downward and then an upward. So like seeing how some of these types of motion go is going to be important. Okay. But yeah, this is also where we're going to discuss things like stepwise motion, which is these are steps all the way up. These are steps up and back. And then anything bigger than a second is a leap. Okay, so that's a leap and that's a leap. Anything bigger than a second. All right. But what we're going to talk about are these four types of motion. So if you want to go ahead and jot those down, we have contrary motion, oblique motion, similar motion, and parallel motion. I've also listed these in order of good to bad, and things that you want to do as much as possible and things that you want to avoid doing. Sometimes it's fine if you do them. In other times, you want to kind of avoid it in general. All right, contrary motion, it's best to use like your own little picture diagram here. Contrary motion is when the voices go in opposite directions. Okay, it makes pretty, so if the upper voice is going up, lower voice is going down, that's contrary motion, okay? And it can go the other way. The upper voice can go down, the bottom voice can go up, it doesn't matter. Up or down, either way, but contrary motion is going in the two opposite directions. Oblique motion is when one voice stays static and then one voice moves. It can go up, it can go down, that's fine. The static one can be the top voice. It doesn't matter what order they're in. Oblique just means one stays and one moves. Okay? Similar motion is when both of the voices are moving in the same direction, both up or both down, that's fine. But they are starting and ending in a different interval. Okay. So you start with a third between the voices and then you end on a fourth. They both went up to get there, hence the similar motion. But you're not having like an exact interval maintained, which leads us to parallel motion. Parallel motion meaning moving in the same direction and the same interval. Oh, look, you can't see that. There we go. So you have a fifth here, F to C, and then A to E, and you have a fifth there. So this is what we would call parallel motion, and this particular one is a P5. Now, not all parallel motions are bad. You can have parallel thirds, you can have sixes, sevens, there's a whole bunch. The only ones that we do not want to do are octaves and fifths. Okay. So I've given you two examples here that show you parallel octaves, okay? So what you're looking for is that we had talked a lot in the last one about how you're not supposed to have more than an octave between any adjacent upper voices. So between the soprano and the alto, between the alto and the tenor, you're not allowed to have an octave there. When we start talking about parallel octaves and parallel fifths, which I have written under my happy little paper here, These can occur in any two voices. So it's not just adjacent voices. It could be soprano and bass. It could be tenor and soprano. It could be alto and bass. It could be the adjacent ones, tenor and bass, alto and tenor, but it can also be the ones that are anywhere, okay? So they can be sneaky. They can sneak up on you and you can write them almost anywhere. So the trick to not writing them is to know where you have octaves. The only time you're going to have an octave is when you have a doubled note. So whenever you write that doubled note in a triad, you've got to be aware of where you put it and make sure that if you've got two triads in a row, you don't do the two doubled notes in a row. Okay. So looking at that, I want you to pause the video right now. And just in this first example, tell me or figure out which ones between which two voices are the parallel octaves. So you'll have the same interval first going to the same interval second. And you want to tell me what it is from. So go ahead and pause. Okay, so what you should have found is that the octave here is F to F. The notes are F, A, C. So here's the octave that is between the bass and the alto. And then I have D to D, which is an octave, again, between the bass and the alto. It has to be within the same two voices for it to be considered an error. So if you have the F here, F there, and then you have a D here and a D here, like if that was another D, it was up there, that's not parallel because you've entered into another voice. It has to be this singer and this singer that are both singing those octaves. Okay, go ahead and pause again. Look for the octave in the second one. Okay, this one's a little easier to see. You've got the G and the G, F and the F, and they're right there. Okay. So this is something to avoid writing. Okay. Now, this one is a good example of, well, how do I avoid writing it? Well, all right. So let's stick, let's put this down here. I'm going to do the same first chord. So I have G, B, D, G. Okay. Now, well, this is G, B, D, but this is in the bass. The fifth is in the bass. So from the previous unit, you know that anytime we have a second inversion chord, so this is a G6/4 chord, we shouldn't be doubling the G. We should be doubling the D. Should double the bass note of second inversion chords. So now I don't have that first G anymore. I don't have this one anymore. So I can now easily go back, put this in, and I have solved the problem. Okay, so now I have this voice is now going up and this one's going down, and I have contrary motion, which is my favorite. So really, if you are careful to double appropriately, you are less likely to get these instances in there. Okay, all right, now we kind of have ditto on the parallel fifths. We don't want to do these either. Turn the light off for a minute here. Yeah, that's better. So you don't want to do the parallel fifths either. And these are a little bit harder to see because you don't have the obvious same letter going on. So I want you to go and pause the video between these first two chords. Where is the fifth? Okay, between what two of them, where is the parallel fifth? Okay, the parallel fifth, it kind of stares at you in the lower clef. So you have C, E, G to D, F, A. So those are two fifths, and you can see them really nicely in the bass and the tenor. Now, if you're really looking at the whole thing, you'll notice that not only did I write a parallel fifth, I wrote a parallel octave. Yuck. So here, C, D, C, D, that counts as also parallel octave, which is not okay. Now this one, you'll notice but everything is going up by step. This is there's an E here, but that is a third. C to E, that's a third. E to C, that's a sixth. Then G to E, that's another sixth. So like those intervals are fine. It's really just avoiding these perfect ones. And it's just fourths, it's just fifths and octaves. The fourths are not something that we're gonna like stress about. Okay, go ahead and pause the video again and see if you can find the parallel fifth in the next one. This one's a little bit hidden, but it still kind of sticks out because of the big leap. So you have E, G, B, B, D, F. Now you notice how I say these, that I say them like the chords. I'm not going to count up to a fifth. I'm not going to go E, G, B, C. Like I'm not going to do that. Or E, F, G, A, B. I can count my alphabet. Like I'm not going to do that every time. I'm going to say my triads. I will tell you that doing these fifths, being like E, G, B, B, D, F, it's a good way to also get those chords just rehashed in your brain a bunch of times. So this is what we would consider a parallel fifth, and we want to not do. Again, here's one where you can kind of solve it just by shaking around your voicings a little bit. If I simply move the B out of there, I have it kind of a little tighter like this, E, G, B, E. And then I want this seventh chord, B, D, F, A. I'm going to try to keep, I'll put the B down here, but then I have D, F, A. So I see that I have a leap down here in the bass. So I want to kind of do contrary motion to the bass. And that's in general what I'm going to try to do all the time. I'm going to try to do contrary motion to the bass. So if I can go D, F, A, if I can put the A up, if I can put the F up, then I can put the D up there, then all of my upper voices have gone that way. This one has gone this way. Okay, now to expand on that just for a second, back here in types of voicings, you can't have parallel voices if you're going contrary. Now there's there's an exception to every rule, but like for the most part, if you're writing contrary motion, you're very unlikely to get anything that's parallel or even hidden parallel. If you have similar motion, if all of your voices are going the same way, something is bound to be an octave or a fifth in there, and you're going to get stuck. So try very hard to keep your upper voices not only within an octave of each other adjacently, but try to keep them going in contrary motion to the bass as much as you can. Could you get a fifth or an octave within these ones because they're going similar? Well, yeah, sure. But if you see the bass going down, the first place to try is to go up with your voices. Because I could have just as easily done this from this starter voicing. So if I want B, D, F, A, I could have gone down and down and down, which actually ends up being okay. But we have it, either one of these work, and this is always the place that I would want to start because I want to start contrary. Even though this is close, nice and tight and tidy, I want to try to go close but contrary if I can. Okay, so what we covered, if I back way up here. So what we covered are types of motion. So contrary motion, oblique motion, similar and parallel. And that the two things within parallel motion that we want to avoid are parallel octaves and parallel fifths in between any voice. We do not want to write them. Okay, thanks all.